This is the religious practice. It's a common practice throughout all religions and all beliefs that there is a method and a kind of a proscribed practice of how do we get to where we want to go. Now it's when we look at all these individual beliefs and all these individual religions, it can seem as if they are in conflict. But really, the conflict between them is in our own minds. That when examined closely, the goal, even of the religions that seem so different, the goal is this return, we could just say to love. If we said to God, then some might disagree, but this return to love, to go from a mindset of separation, of isolation, of aloneness, to a frame of mind in which we feel comfortable, connected, at peace. This really, at the core of every discipline, this is the goal. So there's there's four things that show through in every religious practice, and you can find them. If you look, you can find them in any of them. The first basis is faith, and faith is more than belief. Like say, okay, so I can make an example that I could say that I believe that Springfield is the capital of Illinois. That's not the same thing as I know that Springfield is the capital of Illinois. Illinois I shouldn't have any problem with, but if you ask me what the capital of Connecticut is, I would go, well, I believe it is, and I don't even have a belief about it because I don't know. Somebody here probably knows, but it would be like a guess, right? But I could think, well, I heard somewhere, I think maybe that's what it is. But if I was in Connecticut, well, hopefully I would know. If I lived in Connecticut, hopefully I would know. It would be a thing of knowing. It would be something that is not questioned, right? I know that's the case. That's what it is. Rather than me just having kind of a vague belief about it. So faith is a knowing. And sometimes we get into this idea that we don't have enough faith. We think, oh, I just don't have enough faith. But actually, we have all the faith in the world. We just, if we're suffering, we have put our faith in the wrong things. We have faith in the troubles of the world. We have faith in the insufficient supply of money. We have faith in the betrayal of sometimes of those close to us, and rather than putting our faith in the fact that we're all connected and that there's nothing to fear. And so it's a knowing, but it's also when we begin to establish this faith in us, that where we really know that we're connected to God, that we're connected to life, and that we're not on the outside looking in. What happens is, as a result of this knowing, is we come to a peace. We come to a certain peace of mind. And we're able to have a sense of being at home wherever we're at. And that's not to say, and if you come around here long enough, you'll know that I will probably say it every Sunday, that the world that we see is not our home. That our home is something beyond that. But with faith, we understand that we actually are home, even though it seems like we're somewhere else. And so that sense of peace comes over us. And then there's this element of devotion that, when you call it devotion, it seems very serious. But devotion is like keeping a ritual. And all religions have this keeping of a ritual, that I do certain things on a daily basis. I do certain things on a weekly basis. I do certain things on an annual basis. Every day, every week, or every month, or whatever, and every year I celebrate like holidays. I do certain things. And each religion has, of course, different kinds of things that you would practice. But if you're involved in one of these paths and you don't practice the devotion and the ritual, what happens is, well, for some people would think that what happens is you're like, that God's getting mad at you because you're not doing what you were taught to do. God sets down these laws. And of course, here's where the religions differ. God has set down different laws in different situations with different people, but that's not the concern. It's not, God doesn't get mad because you're not practicing devotion. What happens when we don't do these ritual things is that we begin to lose touch with the foundation of our belief. It's something that occurs inside. So if I have made a determination that I'm going to be involved in my recovery program, that I'm going to be involved in my 11th step, and that I'm going to pray and meditate daily, and then I don't, they're not going to kick me out of the meeting. It's just that I'm not going to get the benefit. If I've made a decision that I'm going to practice, I've got my Buddhist practice that I'm going to chant Nam-myo Renge Kyo for a certain amount of time every day, and I don't, doesn't mean that the Buddha is going to be mad at me. It just means that I'm losing touch with my practice, and I'm not going to be grounded like I want it to be. So this devotion, it's very interesting how connected with this devotion is these daily practices, but also the practice of holidays and these things that occur on a regular basis. But what's very important about this practice of ritual is that we not just go through the motions, because we need to remember the meaning. So ritual without meaning is not very useful, except it is some kind of a discipline, and it can be useful in that way. But if we just say the words and don't remember and don't think about, don't allow our minds to work on what this thing means that we're doing, then we're not going to get even close to all of the benefits that we can get. And then in many religions, something connected to this devotion is the idea of the practice of hospitality. This is supposed to be a daily devotion, that part of your religious practice is to be hospitable to people. And of course, what this means is, in the most basic sense, is that you welcome people. Now, it could be you welcome them into your home. It could be that you welcome them into your business. It could be that, but really, it's talking about welcome, meaning you're welcoming them into your presence. That actually, you are welcoming their presence into your presence. And this is considered an act of devotion. Devotion to God. So this practice of being hospitable to others. Well, first, again, and this is another thing. From our way of thinking, God's not going to get upset if you don't do this. But of course, what happens when we're not hospitable to others? We feel isolated. We feel we're upset. We feel well. Obviously, if we're not hospitable to others, we feel alienated from those others because, for whatever reason, we're unable to welcome their presence into our presence. So this daily devotion, something, and each of us should decide. And the name of the talk for today is Pathfinder. And we're not here on this Sunday to tell you what your path should be. But rather to encourage you to find a path. And the most important thing about this is that you build your own faith, that you decide based on study and based on your own prayer what your devotion is going to be, based on what and it's something that's very helpful is if you look back at your family traditions, where you have come from, what the religious background was that you came from. You can find these daily devotions that you can apply to your life, but maybe with a broader aspect, once you start to study other things. But there's nothing, I think it's actually helpful to use what we've grown up with. If we didn't grow up with anything, we've got a clean slate, we can do whatever we want. But so I remember Thich Nhat Hanh always used to, people come to, Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese monk, and he's got Buddhist retreats all over the world. And people would come to him from all different religions, and he would tell them that he was not there to convert them to Buddhism, that he wasn't interested in converting them, that what he wanted to do was allow them to absorb these principles and then go back to their own communities and share the principles back there. So in other words, not to leave where they came from, but to go back and then try to be helpful to what they had left, where they had come from. So this is the idea then. And then, of course, attached to all of this is this idea of disciplined action. That in order to be on the path and to be growing and to be trying to, and by the way, the reason that we're doing all this is not so that we can please someone else. It's not so that we can please the teacher. It's not so that we can please our family. It's not so that we can please God even. The reason that we're doing this is to take ourselves from a mindset of suffering, a mindset of feeling like we're alone and alienated in the world, to coming back into a kind of a holistic thinking where we actually have a sense that we're a part of the world, that we're a part of the larger system of life. And that's why we're doing this, that the goal is peace of mind and the ability to be loving in the world. And if we're doing these things just to please somebody else, we will find that it's really not satisfying. You'll end up with a resentment, and it won't work. But disciplined action means I'm going to, based on the beliefs, based on my faith, my beliefs, my devotion, I am going to say, these are the things that I'm going to do. I'm going to behave in a certain way. I'm making a commitment that I'm going to behave in a certain way. And now many religions connect this idea of disciplined action to a consequence, right? So what you do now affects what happens next. Now, there's a very basic law of the universe called cause and effect. That you do something, and then there's an effect from that. And then in the midst of the effect, of course, then there's another effect. So what that means is that based on whatever we think, do, say, don't do, the result happens. So not because God was feeling mischievous that day, not because circumstances were conspiring against us, but cause and effect is in operation. And when I do a certain thing, something else happens. The example that I use is if you go to a still pond out in the forest, and you can just picture this in your mind, and you take a pebble and you throw it in. When it hits the water, these waves start moving out from the center. This is cause and effect. The cause was the rock hit the water. The effect was the ripples begin to move out. And if you watch long enough, you will see, you have to watch closely, but you will see that then it all recedes back and comes back to the center. A lot smaller, but still it all moves back, and then again it's calm again. So if we think about our actions during the day as us just going around throwing rocks into the still pond, and these ripples are coming out, right? And now other people are doing the same thing. So sometimes other people's ripples become our effect, but they are not our cause. And this is like very important to remember. We can be at the end of an effect, but we are not, those effects do not cause us to do anything else. So someone else may do something that seems to stir up our pond, but we do not have to react in that way. We feel the effect, we see the effect coming, we see the ripple coming towards us, we feel it washing over us, and then we decide what we're going to do next. Now, in many religious practices, what we do is like put on a balance sheet. It's like at the end of the day, when whatever day that is, that the final judgment is rolled out, you've got this balance sheet of you did this many good things and you did this many bad things, and if the good outweighs the bad, then whatever that particular religion says is, the outcome, that's what it is. You get there, right? And even the Hindus and the Buddhists, they have this idea, they just call it karma. And this law of karma is it's the same. It's the same law. It's the same thing, except that you have to go back and repeat the class over and over again. You just keep repeating the class until you get your action right. But so this idea, though, is discipline action is going to say, well, here the Buddhists have it right. They've got these ideas are actually, you can find almost all of these ideas in every other religion. But here's what the Buddhists say about this. There's 4 noble truths, and there's an 8-fold path. And these 4 noble truths are like this. All life knows suffering. And this is what, in Course in Miracles, what we say is, in this world, you have suffering. In the material world, you have suffering. All life knows suffering, and no one alone, being separate, gets what they want out of life. Now, we may look out and see other people's life experiences, and we may think, oh, they're rich, they're famous, they've got all sorts of things going on. Man, I wish I kind of had that. They're still suffering. Because even as much as it may look like they've got everything, there's still problems. There's still issues. Because no matter what, in the material world, no matter what, we never get everything we think we need or want, or because it's unending. It's not because we're trying to fill ourselves up with things from the outside. So this suffering, and then it goes on to say why. The cause of the suffering is ignorance and clinging. The Buddha said it like this. He said, the cause of all human suffering is desire. And what he meant was not that it wasn't not desire, like, the word desire actually means of the Father. And that's where it means desire. It means of the Father. So a desire of the heart, meaning a desire that comes from love, a desire that comes from comes from a motivation to serve the common welfare, knowing that we're part of the common welfare. That's not what Buddha was talking about the suffering comes from. The desire that he was talking about is the desire to get stuff that makes us feel individually, makes us feel better, and then not being able to let go of it once we get it. So clinging is this very real idea of as life comes to us, we want to grab certain things and hold them to ourselves, and we are afraid that if they go away, that we won't be complete. And so this is the cause of, and actually many of us have seen this, that the clinging actually makes it go away. So this wanting, saying that I must have this, and it doesn't have to be a thing. It doesn't have to be something material. It could be a situation. It could be a relationship. It could be, anything that we put our attention on like that, and I say, I've got to have it. This is what causes suffering. So, and there is a way. There is an end to the suffering. And the end to the suffering is just learning to want it. Now, what I'm saying is, the end to suffering is learning to want the end of suffering. So there's some willingness involved here. I have to teach myself that this clinging, this obsession, this compulsive activity, this is causing my suffering. So I have to come to a point of willingness to say, I want an end to it. And from that point, then some things start to happen. The way to end the suffering is what what Buddha actually told them. This is the eightfold path. The first in the eightfold path was right understanding. Learning the nature of reality and the truth about life. Now that seems very complicated. It seems like I could take a long time. And it could, if you really needed to analyze everything. But the nature of life, the nature of reality is that everything is one. The truth about life is that all life is one life. That we don't have our individual lives. That we are sharing life with all other life all the time. The truth about life is that it does not end, that it is eternal. Now I'm just giving you some examples, and these are, what I'm throwing out here is just what I believe about this, right? So the nature of reality is that when I see reality from my individual perspective, and I'm saying alone, apart from, isolated, I am wrong. I'm not seeing reality. When I see reality from the perspective of we are all part of this one thing, then my view of reality is actually correct. When I think about life as being some short thing that's going to end soon, and that mine is separate from everyone else's, I'm not seeing it correctly. When I see that life is shared, and that I can never lose my life, then I am. Now just think about the difference in mindset. If I can go from the perspective of, and as soon as we start to notice that the body is aging, these thoughts start coming to mind about somewhere down the line, you know, this body's going to die, and then that's the end of me, and I might have some beliefs that, you know, kind of try to neutralize those bad feelings. But if we start to think about the fact that the body's just temporary, but life is not. So if we just think about how much more comfortable that idea is. Yes, I don't know what exactly is going to happen, but somewhere down the line, I'm going to set this body aside. But I'm not going to set life aside. Life is going to continue. And so just think about the difference in mindset from those two perspectives. Now I don't have to, it's not a fear that I have to have anymore. And you know what, even if I'm wrong, and it's okay, I can consider the fact that I'm wrong, but even if I'm wrong and when the body dies, that's it, there is no more, I'll still be much more happier from now until that point if I have this idea in mind that life never ends. I'm going to have a better life for that whole length of time. So I don't care if I fooled myself or not. It's still a better idea. I prefer that if you see Life of Pi. That's the story I prefer. Okay? So, right